Have you ever let someone go, thinking it was the right thing only to carry that decision with you for years? Like a quiet ache that never quite left. Jasper Carter believed he was doing the noble thing when he walked away from the woman he loved. He didn't explain, didn't say goodbye. He simply vanished, thinking distance would spare them both pain. But fate, quiet, relentless, had other plans. 2 years later, Jasper wakes up in a hospital after a car crash and finds himself face to face with the past he thought he'd buried. Elena Brooks, the woman he left behind, is now the nurse at his bedside. And more shocking than that, she's holding a secret, his child, born in his absence. Now imagine it's you. The man you once trusted disappears without a word, and one day he's back wounded, regretful, and asking for another chance. Could you let him in? Would you? This is not just a story about love lost and found. It's about forgiveness, quiet courage, and the strength it takes to stay, not when it's easy, but when it's right. If you've ever wondered what it means to start over, to rebuild what was broken, this story is for you. Like, share, and subscribe to Shining Stories, because your next unforgettable journey begins right now. The rain had started that afternoon, soft at first, like a whisper on the windows of Jasper Carter's Cadillac Escalade. By evening, it fell in thick, determined sheets, drowning out the usual city hum beneath a blanket of thunder and rushing water. Jasper barely noticed. He was already late again, and his Bluetooth headset buzzed with voices from the quarterly board meeting he was supposed to be attending in person. His team had insisted on zooming him in, unwilling to start without their CEO. But Jasper's thoughts weren't entirely on the earnings report or the international expansion they were debating. He was tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep fixed, but the kind that crept into your bones when success no longer satisfied. His fingers drummed anxiously on the steering wheel as he turned onto Cedar Avenue, the main road that led into the downtown hospital district. He wasn't headed there for any medical emergency. He just knew it was a shortcut. Old habits from the days when he used to live on this side of town, back when life was simpler and love had meant something real. The voice in his ear droned on. Jasper glanced at the screen on the dash to mute the call just for a second. He never saw the van coming. A blinding rush of headlights, the sound of metal screaming against metal, then silence. Time didn't stop at fractured. The next thing Jasper knew, cold rain soaked through his shirt as shattered glass pressed against his cheek. His legs felt heavy. He tried to move, but pain shot up his side like a knife. Somewhere nearby, a car horn blared endlessly, a mournful sound that seemed to scream for him when he couldn't. "Sir, can you hear me?" The voice was distant at first, then clearer. "We've got a live one, male, mid to late 30s, pulse strong but irregular. Head wound. We need to move." Hands touched his arm. Someone shone a light in his eyes. He blinked against the brightness, unsure of where he was or who he even was for a moment. A strange calm settled over him just as they lifted him onto the stretcher. He could hear the rain pounding on the ambulance roof as the doors slammed shut behind him. "Get us to St. Mercy, now!" Those words rang in Jasper's ears, even as his eyes closed. St. Mercy, a name from another life, inside the emergency room of St. Mercy Medical Center. It was just another Tuesday night, until it wasn't. Elena Brooks was halfway through charting a patient's vitals when the trauma call came over the intercom. Incoming, male, car accident, unconscious. Head trauma, ETA 2 minutes. She moved quickly. It was second nature now, grabbing gloves, checking monitors, prepping the trauma bay. There was no time to think, only to act, and that was exactly how she liked it. Keep moving, keep breathing, keep feeling less. That had been her survival plan for the last 2 years. Elena didn't expect much from nights like these, just long hours and an aching back. But as she stood by the gurney, waiting for the paramedics to roll in the latest accident victim, a familiar chill crawled down her spine. Something felt wrong, not in the medical sense, in the way a person senses a shift before the storm actually breaks. The ambulance doors swung open. She moved forward as the medics shouted vitals. Name unknown, no ID, possible concussion, moderate bleeding from the scalp. Elena leaned over the stretcher, flashlight in hand. She pushed aside the wet hair matted to his forehead, checking his pupils, and froze. Everything inside her stopped, because the man lying broken and bloodied in front of her was someone she thought she'd never see again. Jasper, she whispered, before she could stop herself. No one around her heard. The ER continued to hum with life phones ringing, machines beeping, nurses moving like clockwork. But for Elena, time stilled. She stared at the face she once traced with her fingertips on quiet Sunday mornings, the face that had disappeared from her world 2 years ago without a word, the man who had walked out of her life and unknowingly left something behind. Elena called Dr. Michaels, snapping her out of it. Let's get an IV in. Run a head CT. He's fading fast. She nodded, heart pounding, hands trembling. She moved closer to him, pushing aside the emotions clawing at her chest. This wasn't about her. This was about saving a life, even if it was the life of the man who had once broken hers. As the trauma team wheeled Jasper into the exam room, Elena followed at a measured pace, trying to hide the storm behind her eyes. Why, of all the hospitals in the state, of all the nights, why now? She didn't know the answers yet, but part of her feared what would come if she let her heart ask the questions. Elena stood by the foot of the trauma bed, arms crossed tight against her chest. The thin paper gown covering Jasper's torso did nothing to disguise the bruises forming across his ribs. Monitors beeped steadily beside him, their rhythm too calm compared to the chaos now storming inside her. He was still unconscious, his head bandaged, an IV line snaking down his arm. The man who once whispered he'd never leave had reappeared under fluorescent lights, silent and broken. Elena hated how her hands trembled when she adjusted his oxygen line. It had been 2 years. 2 years of radio silence. 2 years of wondering if he'd meant any of it, the soft mornings, the talks about building something together, the way he held her hand when no one was watching. 2 years of raising a child alone and pretending she didn't still dream of his voice some nights. Now here he was, not a memory, not a ghost, but flesh and bone, wounded, vulnerable. It was almost cruel. She turned away quickly, needing air, needing space, but saint, mercy was no place for either. The emergency room buzzed with activity. Doctors shouted out orders. Nurses hurried past, wheeling carts and pushing through swinging doors. Dr. Michaels caught her arm. You okay? Elena nodded too fast. Fine. You sure you went pale when you saw him? It's just a bad one, she said, her voice flat. He looks worse than the vitals suggest. Doctor, Michaels gave her a long look, but he didn't push. Stay close. We might need to intubate if he doesn't wake up soon. Elena forced herself to nod again, though her mind was already spiraling somewhere else. 10 minutes later, Jasper stirred. It started with a twitch in his fingers, then a low groan. Elena stood at his bedside, arms at her sides, watching closely as his eyelids fluttered. When his eyes finally opened, squinting against the bright lights, she saw the moment recognition clicked. Elena! Her name came out raspy, like it hurt him to say it. She didn't move, didn't speak, just looked at him with the kind of expression you give someone who once pulled the rug out from under your whole life. Jasper blinked again. Is it really you? You're at St. Mercy, she said, her voice professional, clipped. You were in a car accident. You've been unconscious for 30 minutes, but you... He winced, trying to sit up. Don't, she said quickly, stepping forward. You hit your head. You need to stay still. Jasper stopped moving, breathing shallow, eyes fixed on hers. I never expected. I didn't either, she replied, then added, quieter. Believe me. There was a long pause. Around them, machines hummed, curtains rustled, and outside the door, someone laughed too loudly. But inside this room, it was just them. Just the two people who used to believe in each other. Elena, he said again, voice barely above a whisper. I'm sorry. The words hung heavy between them. She almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so absurd how one word could think it might patch over 1,000 silent nights, an empty bed, a pregnancy spent alone. Instead, she turned her face away. You need to rest. There's internal bruising and swelling. We're still waiting on your scans. Elena, please, I didn't want it to be like this. I didn't want to leave you. Stop. It came out sharper than she intended. She saw him flinch. I'm not here to unpack the past, she said, more evenly. I'm here to keep you alive. You shouldn't have to do this. I'm a nurse. You're a patient. That's all. His eyes searched hers. You don't mean that. Elena stiffened. I meant what I said. Jasper closed his eyes, as if trying to rewind time. You look different. I am different, she said. She didn't elaborate. Didn't mention the midnight feedings, the sick days alone, the months of wondering if their child would ever know her father. No, that would come later, if it came at all, outside the trauma room. Elena stood with her back against the wall, eyes closed, her heart beat in double time, not from adrenaline, but from memory. Jasper Carter. He had once been her soft place to land. She'd met him at a coffee shop off Pine Street, where she spilled tea on her scrubs, and he offered his napkin with a smile that seemed to say, I've seen worse. Their love hadn't been flashy. It had been quiet, steady, like a river, carving through stone. Until he vanished. No note, no call, no reason, just silence. And now this. Fate had a wicked sense of timing. Are you okay? She opened her eyes. It was another nurse, Mandy, younger, wide-eyed, just starting her second year. Fine, Elena said, just tired. You sure Mandy peeked inside the room? That guy's kinda cute, even with the bandages. Elena almost smiled. Almost. Don't let the face fool you, she murmured. That night, as she sat in the staff lounge with her lukewarm coffee, Elena stared out the rain-streaked window and wondered what cruel twist of the universe brought him back here. Was it chance fate, or something unfinished, finally circling back? And most of all, was she strong enough to face what came next, long after her shift ended? Elena found herself standing in the hospital parking lot, fingers clenched tightly around her key fob, engine off. Rain tapped gently against the windshield, a softer rhythm now, but inside her chest, the storm raged on. She hadn't planned to remember. Not tonight. Not ever again. But memories have a cruel habit of blooming when you least want them to. It had been 3 years ago, just after Thanksgiving, when she first met Jasper Carter. Elena had been covering for another nurse at a corporate fundraiser, some lavish event at the Halcyon Hotel, to raise money for pediatric cancer research. She'd shown up in a borrowed black dress, heels too tight, and nerves frayed from a double shift. He had been standing near the back of the ballroom, alone, watching the chaos with a glass of scotch in hand and a look that said he belonged there but didn't want to be. She didn't know who he was then. To her, he was just the man who stepped in when a hedge fund executive started talking down to her about real careers. Jasper had offered her an out, a drink, and an unexpected laugh. "You looked like you wanted to disappear," he'd said, voice low and amused. That obvious, she'd smiled, feeling something settle inside her she didn't know had been restless. They had spent the rest of the evening talking in a quiet corner near the dessert table. He never mentioned his last name, never said he was the CEO of one of the fastest-growing tech firms in the country, that he lived in a high-rise penthouse and had more money than he knew what to do with. To her, he was just Jasper, a man who asked about her patients, who listened when she talked about grief, who walked her to her car and kissed her hand like something out of another time. Their love hadn't been a firework, it had been a slow-burning candle, steady, gentle. They took walks through Oakmont Park, spent rainy Sundays reading on the couch, feet tangled together. She started leaving toothbrushes at his place, then drawers of clothes. Eventually, she brought her favorite coffee mug. She had begun to imagine staying. She told herself she wasn't the kind of woman to fall for a man like him. But then again, Jasper had never treated her like she was beneath his world. In fact, he seemed to crave her simplicity, the way she brewed tea, folded laundry, kissed his forehead when he was stressed. There was one weekend up in the mountains, just the two of them, snow outside and firelight flickering, that she now couldn't bear to remember without her heart aching. She'd whispered she loved him. He had held her closer and said, "You're the only place that feels like home." And she believed him. Then, just like that, he was gone. She'd woken up in his apartment one February morning to find the bed cold beside her. No note, no message. His closet half empty. Bathroom drawers cleared out. At first, she thought he'd gone out for coffee. By noon, her calls went unanswered. By sundown, the building security guard informed her that Mr. Carter had left instructions. She was no longer authorized to enter. That night, the city paper ran a story, tech tycoon engaged to corporate heiress Rebecca Hall, There was a pictured Jasper in a tuxedo, smiling beside a woman with polished hair and eyes that knew the cameras well. Elena had stared at that photo until her vision blurred. She didn't cry right away. She packed. She went home. She worked double shifts. She told no one. Then 3 weeks later, she vomited into a sink between patients and chalked it up to stress. 2 days after that, a pregnancy test told her it wasn't. In the parking lot, Elena took a shaky breath and wiped a tear from her cheek. She had spent the last 2 years rebuilding herself from the ashes of that heartbreak. She'd carried a child alone, given birth with no hand to hold, and loved her daughter fiercely enough to erase the ghost of the man who had left them behind. Or so she thought, until fate, wicked, tangled fate, brought Jasper Carter back to her ER on a stretcher. She turned the key in the ignition. The engine hummed to life. And as she drove home, one question echoed louder than the rest. If he'd stayed, would it have been enough, or was he always meant to be a beautiful lie? The morning after the crash, the ER at St. Mercy had quieted down. The storm had passed some time before dawn, leaving puddles reflecting pale golden light on the hospital floors. Jasper Carter lay awake in his hospital bed, head bandaged, pain dull but persistent across his ribs. His left arm was tethered to an IV, and a blood pressure cuff tightened rhythmically on his bicep every 15 minutes. But none of that compared to the storm inside his chest. He had seen her, Elena. In the blur of confusion, her face had appeared like a dream, familiar, furious, heartbreaking. And she had touched him, spoken to him with that same calm authority she always used in a crisis. She had looked exactly the same, except her eyes, those once warm, amber eyes, had gone still. Not cold, just closed. And he couldn't stop thinking about what might have filled them with such hurt. The door to his room creaked open. Elena walked in holding a tablet and a chart, dressed in clean scrubs. Her hair was tied back in the same no-nonsense bun, but her shoulders were tighter than before. She didn't greet him, didn't meet his eyes. She was here to do a job. "Your scans came back," she said, flipping through the tablet. "No major head trauma, just a moderate concussion and bruised ribs. Lucky, considering the wreckage." Jasper sat up a little, wincing. "Thanks to you, I'm guessing. I'm just the nurse," she said flatly. "You can thank the airbags." He gave a breathy chuckle. Still the same dry wit. She didn't smile. He hated how badly he wanted her to. "Elena," he said quietly. She looked up then. Finally, that name on his tongue again. It sounded like a prayer, or maybe a mistake. "I don't even know where to begin," he said, swallowing hard. "Then don't," she replied. "There's no need. You're going to recover. That's what matters." "No," he said, voice firming. "That's not all that matters. Not when you're here. Not when—" "Don't?" she interrupted. "Please don't do this, Jasper. But I have to." His voice cracked. "You're here. You God, I thought I'd never see you again." Elena folded her arms. "Funny, you never said goodbye either." He winced. "I didn't know how." "No," she said. "You just knew how to disappear." He looked away, ashamed. "You could have called," she said, and her voice broke. "Just barely." "You could have said something." "Anything. I wanted to," he whispered. "Then why didn't you?" "I thought I was protecting you." She let out a short, bitter laugh. From what? From loving you. No, from becoming part of a world that was about to collapse. That made her pause. Jasper exhaled slowly. You remember my company, how fast it was growing? She nodded once, guarded. Well, it turns out, my uncle, the one who raised me after my parents died, had been cooking the books. Years of hidden debts, bad investments. By the time I found out, it was almost too late. Elena narrowed her eyes. So, you ran. I was given a choice, he said. A merger with a powerful family, Rebecca Hall's family. They offered the capital to save my company. Thousands of jobs, everything my father built. And the price was marrying her. Elena's voice trembled. Yes, and you agreed. He didn't answer. That's why you vanished, she said. No message, no warning. You were planning a wedding. Jasper looked gutted. It wasn't like that. I was trying to do the right thing. For who that question landed like a slap. I thought I was being noble. He admitted. I thought sacrificing what I wanted meant I was doing the grown-up thing. Elena stared at him, stunned. And what did Rebecca want? A groom who looked good in press photos? Or did she know you were already in love with someone else? She knew, Jasper said softly. And eventually she walked away too. Elena blinked. We never married, he added. 6 months after the engagement, she called it off. And the company gone. Declared bankruptcy 8 months ago. She let out a long breath. So you lost everything anyway. Jasper nodded, except the one thing I couldn't stop thinking about. Her eyes flicked away. Elena. His voice was barely a whisper. I know I hurt you. I know sorry doesn't come close. But I need you to know walking away from you was the biggest mistake of my life. Silence hung between them. A nurse walked past in the hallway, pushing a cart. Somewhere, a machine beeped, and Elena's voice, when it came, was low, tired, and full of something Jasper didn't expect: sorrow. I was pregnant when you left. The words hit him like a freight train. He didn't breathe, couldn't speak. I found out 3 weeks later, she said, and I sat in your empty apartment wondering how I was going to raise a child alone. Elena! No. She held up a hand. Don't say anything yet. He swallowed hard. Is the baby a girl? His lips parted. She's 8 months old now. He leaned forward, eyes wide. Is she mine? Elena looked him straight in the eye. What do you think? And with that, she turned and walked out of the room, leaving behind a man whose world had just changed again. Forever. Jasper didn't sleep. Even after the morphine dulled the pain in his ribs, even after the night nurse dimmed the lights and wished him rest, his mind refused to shut down. He had a daughter, a little girl, 8 months old, and Elena had raised her alone without him. Every moment he had missed pressed down on his chest like a weight. Her first breath, her first laugh, her first time reaching out with tiny fingers. He hadn't even known her name. At 3:17 a.m. Unable to bear the stillness any longer, Jasper reached for his phone on the nightstand. The screen glowed cold in his hands. He typed Elena Brooks' daughter into the search bar, half expecting nothing. She wasn't the kind to post pictures on social media, but Jasper had resources, connections. Even in the ruins of his former empire, he still had a few favors left. It didn't take long. One of the hospital's internal newsletters popped up in a cached archive, a PDF from 6 months ago, titled Spring Giving Drive. There she was, Elena, standing in the pediatric ward, cradling a baby girl in her arms. Both wore matching pastel outfits. Elena smiled gently at the camera, the kind of smile that wasn't for show but came from deep in the soul. The caption read, "Nurse Elena Brooks with her daughter Emma, bringing comfort to young patients during Pediatric Week." Jasper stared at the screen, heart thudding. Emma. Her name was Emma. He zoomed in on the baby's face. Dark hair like his, soft, round cheeks, big, searching eyes that made something inside him ache. She was real. She was his, and he'd missed everything. When the sun rose over St. Mercy, Jasper was still sitting up, phone in hand, the photo frozen on the screen. The guilt had dug its claws deep, and it wasn't letting go. He'd always thought of himself as responsible, as someone who did the hard things when it counted. But now he'd missed the most important moments of his life. And it wasn't Elena's fault. It was his. Elena walked into his room just after 7, clipboard in hand, looking tired but composed. She paused when she saw him awake and alert, eyes red-rimmed but focused. He didn't waste time. "I saw the photo. He said—" She blinked. "What photo?" "The hospital newsletter. You and Emma." Her lips parted slightly, but she didn't look surprised. "Just weary. You had no right to look her up." "I had every right," he said quietly. "She's my daughter." Elena crossed her arms. "And where were you when she was born? When I was alone in a hospital room, terrified and exhausted, holding a newborn, and wondering how I was going to do it all by myself." "I didn't know exactly," she snapped. "You didn't know, because you didn't care enough to stay." Jasper flinched. "I tried to find you," she continued, voice lower now, trembling. "But your number was disconnected. Your doorman turned me away. Your office wouldn't take messages. It was like you'd erased me." "I didn't erase you," he whispered. "Then what do you call it?" Her eyes shone, not with anger now, but hurt. "You left me, Jasper, and now you want to show up 8 months later and claim a title you didn't earn." "I don't want a title," he said. "I want a chance." "To what, make up for everything overnight?" "No," he said, stepping carefully. "To be her father, to prove I can be better." Elena's eyes flicked toward the floor, then back to his. "She doesn't know you." She said, "You're a stranger." "I'd like to change that." Her arms wrapped around herself, and for a moment she looked small, vulnerable. "I don't know if I can let you in," she said quietly. "Not after what you did, not with her." "I get that," Jasper said, "but I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." The silence stretched between them again. This time it wasn't angry. It was something else, something raw, tender. Jasper reached for his phone and turned the screen toward her. "She's beautiful," he said, voice rough, "just like you." Elena blinked quickly, then took the phone and looked at the photo herself. Her thumb brushed gently over the baby's cheek. "She started crawling last week," she murmured, "and she laughs when I sneeze. It's the weirdest thing." Jasper smiled despite the heaviness in his chest. "Sounds like she's got a sense of humor already." "She does," Elena said, then softer. "She's mine, Jasper. She's my whole world." He nodded slowly. "And I don't want to take that from you. I just want to be a part of it." The beep of a monitor broke the quiet. Elena glanced at her watch. I have to check on my next patient, she said, placing the clipboard back in the wall rack. Will I see you again? Jasper asked. She paused at the door. You might, she said, but that doesn't mean you'll see her. And with that, she walked out, leaving Jasper to stare at the photo once more. Emma, his daughter, a secret he hadn't known he was missing, but now that he did, he would never let go. It had been 2 days since Elena told him the truth. 2 days since the name Emma had become more than a word, more than a face on a screen. 2 days since Jasper Carter began to realize that being a father wasn't just about biology, it was about showing up, even when the door felt permanently shut. But showing up was all he could do. He remained in his hospital room, refusing to discharge early, even though the doctor said he could leave. Every evening, he watched the hallway, hoping to catch a glimpse of her. Not just Elena, Emma. Even the name tasted new on his tongue, delicate, unfamiliar, precious. He imagined her first cry, her first giggle, the first time she reached for something and missed. He hadn't been there for any of it. And the weight of that truth was unbearable. Elena stood outside his room with a tray in her hands, just an excuse. A cup of black coffee and a plain bagel, no cream cheese. He liked it that way. Her fingers trembled slightly as she knocked and pushed open the door. Jasper looked up, startled, but not by her presence, by what she held. For you, she said simply. He took the tray slowly, his eyes lingering on hers. Thanks. She stayed by the door, arms crossed over her chest, a protective stance she hadn't even realized she was making. I can leave if this is too much, she said. No, he said quickly. Please stay, even just for a minute. She hesitated, then nodded and stepped farther in. Jasper took a sip of the coffee and winced. Still too hot. You always drank it too soon, she said without thinking. The air shifted, subtle but undeniable. A memory passed between them like a shadow on the wall. He set the cup down carefully. You used to bring me bagels after your night shifts. Elena nodded, when I wasn't too tired to remember. He looked at her, eyes soft. You never forgot. The silence stretched. Then Jasper spoke, voice low. Why didn't you tell me? Her jaw tensed. You weren't reachable. You could have sent a letter, an email, anything. I tried, she said quietly. I tried for 2 weeks. After that, I figured if you wanted to know, you'd have stayed. Jasper looked down at his hands. You're right. Elena's voice cracked just a little. I used to lie awake at night, wondering if I should have tried harder. But deep down, I knew chasing a man who chose silence wouldn't have made him stay. I didn't choose silence, he said. I chose fear. She blinked. That's not better. No, he agreed, but it's the truth. A pause. Elena sat down in the chair beside the bed, her movements hesitant, as if unsure whether she was crossing a line. You don't get to show up now and expect to be called Dad, she said. I'm not asking for that. Then what are you asking for? Jasper looked at her, the emotion raw in his voice. A chance. To prove I'm more than the man who left. To show up. To hold her when she cries. To clean up after her messes. To earn her trust. She's a baby, Elena said. She trusts everyone. She doesn't know what it means to be let down. Not yet. I'll never let her down. You already did. The words struck deep, but Jasper nodded, absorbing the blow. I can't undo the past, he said, but I can build something from here." "And what if she gets used to you?" Elena asked. "What if she starts waiting at the door, calling your name, and then you're gone again?" "I won't be." "You say that now." "I mean it now." Her voice broke. "She's not a second chance for you to fix your regrets. She's a whole person, with a heart, a future, and she deserves better than a man who once disappeared without warning." "I know. You don't know," she said, eyes bright with tears. "You don't know what it was like to hold her at night while she screamed with colic, to take her to the ER with a fever of 103 and no one to call, to sing lullabies with a cracked voice and tell her she's loved, even when I wasn't sure I believed it myself." Jasper's throat tightened. "I want to know," he said, "what I want to know what that was like. Every hard moment, every good one too. I want to know all of it." Elena stared at him, and, for the first time, she believed he meant it. They sat in silence again, this time less like strangers and more like survivors of the same shipwreck. Jasper reached into the drawer beside him and pulled out a small object wrapped in tissue paper. "I bought something," he said. Elena raised an eyebrow. He unwrapped it slowly, a smaller plush elephant, gray and soft, with pink ears and stitched eyes. "Elena, I know I don't have a place in her life yet," he said, "but I want her to have this, just to start." She took the toy in her hands and stared at it. "She loves elephants," she whispered. Jasper smiled faintly. "Lucky guess." Elena held the toy against her chest for a moment. "I'll give it to her," she said. He nodded, but didn't speak. As she stood to leave, he asked quietly, "When can I see her?" Elena paused at the door. "I don't know yet," she said, "but I'll let you know when I'm ready." And just like that, the walls that had once felt impenetrable began to shift, inch by careful inch. Not forgiveness? Not yet. But maybe a beginning. For the first time in years, Jasper Carter didn't rush. Not into meetings. Not into deals. Not into love. He moved slowly now, deliberately. Every step felt like walking a tightrope stretched across the fragile line between past regrets and future hopes. Elena hadn't promised him anything. No visitation, no clear path. Just one sentence. "I'll let you know when I'm ready." And so Jasper waited. He was discharged from St. Mercy 3 days after the accident. A nurse wheeled him to the hospital's front entrance while he signed release forms and nodded through follow-up instructions. Elena wasn't there when he left. He didn't expect her to be. Still, he paused outside the glass doors before stepping into the sunlight, as if waiting for something, permission, maybe, or a sign. None came, so he walked out, no chauffeur, no press, no penthouse to return to. Just a second-hand SUV he had rented and a hotel room he'd extended for another week. He was staying in town now, indefinitely. Each day, he drove to the coffee shop Elena used to love, the one with the mismatched chairs and cinnamon scones she craved during her 3rd trimester. He never saw her there, but he left small notes behind on the bulletin board. The elephants are still her favorite. "I saw a little girl with curls today. She reminded me of someone. Still here. Never signed them." He wasn't sure she read them, but it was a way to be close without crossing the line. At the hospital, he didn't try to see Elena. He knew better than to ambush her at work. But he asked a nurse, Mandy, the younger one with kind eyes, if she could pass along something. A letter. He had written it on hotel stationery, longhand, no edits. In it, he told Elena about his own father, how he died when Jasper was 10, how the absence of that man had carved a hollow space in his life that nothing money, success, praise had ever filled. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He simply told her the truth. He loved their daughter. And he was ready to earn his place, not demand it. Days passed, then a week, then another, and just when he started to wonder if she'd ever reach back, she called, "Do you want to meet her?" He didn't cry, not until he hung up. The meeting was set for a quiet Sunday afternoon at the Oak Hill Arboretum. Elena had chosen it open, neutral, safe. Jasper arrived 15 minutes early, holding a small stuffed elephant in one hand and wearing a flannel shirt that still smelled faintly of antiseptic from the hospital. He paced by the duck pond, rehearsing lines in his head he knew he'd never say out loud. Then he saw her, Elena, walking toward him with a stroller, and inside it, Emma. She was smaller than he imagined, softer, with a kind of sleepy, curious eyes that reminded him of every good thing he thought he'd lost. Elena approached slowly. She didn't speak right away. Neither did he. He bent slightly, eyes locked on the child who shared his last name and none of his memories. "She's perfect," he whispered. Elena didn't answer. He looked at her. Then, "Can I?" She nodded once. He crouched down beside the stroller, unsure if he was breathing. Emma blinked at him. Then she sneezed and giggled. Jasper laughed too loud, too raw, and Elena looked away quickly, blinking hard. "She likes elephants," she said. "I brought one," he replied, holding up the plush toy. "May I?" Elena lifted Emma gently and placed her in his arms. For a moment, the world narrowed to the weight of a tiny body against his chest, the rise and fall of her breath, the warmth of her cheek. He hadn't known it could feel like this. They sat on a bench afterward, letting Emma crawl in the grass between them. Jasper didn't try to hold Elena's hand, didn't try to say too much. He just watched their daughter chase butterflies. "I thought you'd come back different," Elena said softly. "I did," he said. "No, I mean, I thought you'd come back the same man in a better suit, demanding, loud, trying to buy your way in. I tried that once," Jasper said. "Didn't work out." "No," she agreed. "It didn't." He looked at her. "This time, I'm staying, no matter how long it takes." She met his gaze and didn't look away. It wasn't reconciliation. It wasn't romantic. It was something harder, more honest. The slow return of trust. The first time Jasper changed a diaper, he wore gloves, not medical gloves, dishwashing gloves. Bright yellow, thick, overkill. Elena had laughed for the first time in weeks. "That's cheating," she said, watching him from the kitchen doorway, arms crossed and smiling despite herself. "You didn't include biohazard in the parenting brochure," he muttered, holding the soiled diaper at arm's length as if it were ticking. Emma kicked her legs gleefully on the changing mat, completely unbothered by the commotion she caused. Jasper wrinkled his nose, then looked at his daughter. Was this revenge, he asked her. "Did I earn this already?" Emma squealed and reached for his nose. He sighed. "Yeah, I guess I did." It had been 2 weeks since their meeting at the Arboretum. Since then, Jasper had shown up at Elena's apartment nearly every evening, never announced, never demanding, just there. He brought groceries, picked up takeout from the diner Elena liked but hadn't been to in months, sat quietly on the floor and stacked wooden blocks while Emma knocked them down. He never tried to take over, never tried to win points. He simply stayed. Some nights, Elena didn't speak much. She looked tired, overwhelmed. Jasper didn't press her. He'd learned that trust wasn't about grand gestures. It was built in small, silent spaces, washing bottles without being asked, letting Emma tug his hair while she babbled nonsense, handing Elena a cup of tea without comment when the circles under her eyes darkened. One night, after Emma's bath, Jasper was drying her off with a duck-shaped towel when she sneezed in his face, laughed, then curled into his chest. It was so small, so ordinary, and it undid him. "I don't know if I'm doing this right," he admitted once, after Emma had fallen asleep and Elena was loading the dishwasher. She didn't turn. There's no right. Just keep showing up. He leaned against the counter. "I can do that." She glanced at him then. "You are." They never talked about the past, not directly, but sometimes memories slipped through the cracks. One evening, Jasper found Elena sitting on the living room floor, folding baby clothes into a tiny laundry basket. He sat beside her without a word, picking up a pink onesie and folding it carefully. "I kept some of your letters," she said suddenly, not looking at him. He stilled. "You read them, not right away." "I was angry." He nodded. "You had every right to be." She finally looked at him. "I still kept them." Later that week, Emma got her first fever. Elena called in sick, canceled everything. By evening, both mother and daughter looked spent, Emma clinging, crying. Elena with that quiet panic Jasper had only seen once before. The night of his accident. "Let me help," he said. "She only wants me," Elena replied, eyes heavy. "Then I'll sit with you both." And he did, for hours. He held Emma when Elena's arms gave out, hummed lullabies off-key, made soup from a recipe he barely remembered. At midnight, Elena fell asleep on the couch. At 2, Emma finally quieted in Jasper's arms, her tiny head resting against his heartbeat. And there, in the hush of exhaustion and healing, Jasper whispered a promise into the silence, "I'll always come back, even when it's hard." By morning, Emma's fever had broken, and Elena, still half asleep and blinking against the light, found Jasper in the rocking chair, Emma asleep on his chest, both of them wrapped in a blanket, breathing in sync. She didn't wake him. She just stood there, a hand over her mouth, and let herself feel something she hadn't in years. Hope, that weekend. Jasper asked Elena something he hadn't dared before. "Can I take her to the park? Just me and her?" She hesitated. "Alone." He nodded. "Just for an hour. You can come if you want. Or rest." She studied his face, searching for any sign of bluff or bravado. There was none. Just a man unguarded, open, steady. "Okay," she said finally, "but text me every 15 minutes. He grinned. "Deal." At the park, Jasper carried Emma on his shoulders, her tiny fingers gripping his ears like reins. She squealed at the ducks, tried to eat a leaf, dropped her pacifier into a puddle. Jasper didn't mind. In fact, he hadn't been this content in years. As they sat on a bench watching other families pass by, Emma rested her head on his shoulder, thumb in mouth. He closed his eyes. For once, he wasn't thinking about stock prices or company meetings or what the headlines would say. He was just a man, holding his daughter, breathing. When he returned to the apartment, Elena opened the door with a question in her eyes. She was perfect, he said, handing Emma over. Elena looked him up and down. No mud, no missing socks, I only lost one pacifier, he confessed. Amateur. They both laughed, and something between them softened again. They still weren't together. There was no talk of that. But they were parenting, side by side. And with each passing day, the love Jasper had once left behind was no longer behind him. It was here, now, in the weight of a baby in his arms, in the way Elena said thank you without words, in every ordinary, extraordinary moment. The thermometer beeped. Elena stared at the small screen like it might change if she willed it hard enough. 102.7 degree Quove. Emma's cheeks were flushed red, her breath shallow and uneven, small body burning in Elena's arms. She tried not to panic, tried to remind herself this had happened before. Fevers came, they passed, but something about tonight felt different. Emma had been fussy all day, refusing food, clinging tighter than usual. Now, at almost midnight, her whimpering had turned into soft cries, each one carving into Elena's chest. She rocked back and forth on the edge of the bed, humming off-key, voice hoarse from exhaustion. "I've got you," she whispered. "Mama's here." But inside, she felt like she was unraveling. The knock came just before 12:30. Elena opened the door, barefoot, hair loose, dark circles under her eyes. She didn't remember texting Jasper, but her phone was still clutched in her hand. Maybe she had. He stood in the hallway, hoodie unzipped, holding a brown paper bag. "I brought Pedialyte and a forehead strip," he said gently. "And those cooling pads she used last time." Elena stepped aside without a word. Inside, the apartment was dim. Emma was lying on the couch, moaning softly, too tired even to cry. Jasper crouched next to her. "She's warm," he murmured, brushing a hand across her forehead. "I can't get it to go down," Elena said. Her voice cracked. "I've tried everything." He looked up at her, no panic, no judgment, just concern. "Go take a shower," he said. "What, 10 minutes? Steam. Breathe. I've got her." "I don't, Elena," he said softly. "You've done everything. Let me do this part." She hesitated, then nodded, the tears finally spilling over as she disappeared into the bathroom. For the next half hour, Jasper held Emma close, cradling her against his chest as he sat on the floor, rocking gently. He whispered nonsense lyrics to songs, promises he hadn't yet earned, prayers he wasn't sure how to say. He remembered his mother, long gone, singing to him when he was sick. He started humming the same tune, low and steady. Emma whimpered once, then quieted. Her tiny hand rested against his shirt, over his heart. When Elena emerged, her hair damp, wearing an oversized T-shirt, she found them in the same spot, Jasper still rocking, Emma asleep, the thermometer resting on the coffee table. 101.4 degrees. Not perfect, but progress. She knelt beside them, reaching out to touch Emma's cheek. Her skin felt cooler, less angry. She stopped crying. Elena whispered. Jasper nodded. "A few minutes ago." He looked at Elena then, really looked at her. "I don't know how you do this alone." Her smile was tired. You get used to it. You shouldn't have to." She didn't answer. They put Emma to bed together. Jasper laid her gently in the crib, pulling the blanket up to her chin. She stirred once but didn't wake. Elena turned off the nightlight. In the hallway, Jasper hesitated. "I can stay on the couch," he offered, just in case. Elena looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the blinds. Jasper woke with a crick in his neck and a baby monitor buzzing softly beside him. He sat up, blinking. Elena was already in the kitchen, hair pulled back, 2 mugs of coffee on the counter. She slept through the night, she said, woke up smiling. Jasper let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "She's tougher than I am," he said. Elena handed him a mug. "She gets it from me," he grinned. Clearly. They stood in comfortable silence, sipping coffee. Then Elena looked at him. "Thank you," she said, "for last night." He nodded. "Any time. Always." Her eyes softened. "You really meant that, didn't you?" she asked. "What?" "That you'd stay through the hard parts." He didn't look away. "I meant every word." She didn't say it then, but later that day, when he reached for Emma and she reached back, she knew something had shifted, maybe forever. The evening after Emma's fever broke, the apartment was quieter than usual. The usual hum of cartoons on low volume had been replaced by something softer, the faint sound of a lullaby playing from Emma's musical nightlight, the occasional clink of a spoon in a mug, and the steady rhythm of 2 people trying to share silence without letting it swallow them. Elena sat on the couch, legs tucked beneath her, a blanket across her lap. She looked exhausted, but not in the way Jasper remembered. This was a softer kind of tired, one that came from relief after holding it together for too long. Jasper sat on the opposite end, nursing tea he hadn't sweetened right. Neither of them had said much since dinner, but the words were there, in the way she glanced at him when he made Emma laugh, in the way he picked up her favorite mug without asking. In the silence they let sit between them, long and unafraid. Finally, Jasper set his mug down and turned toward her. "I meant it," he said quietly. Elena looked up. "All of it. What I said last night, about staying, about not leaving again." Her fingers tightened around the blanket. "Jasper," he leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I know it doesn't change what I did, and I know saying sorry feels small compared to what you lived through." She didn't interrupt. "But I need you to know something," he continued. "The years without you, without Emma, they weren't life. They were noise, empty rooms, meetings I didn't care about, parties I barely remembered. I thought I was protecting you by walking away. But the truth is, I was protecting myself." From what she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, from loving someone enough to risk everything. He looked up at her, eyes wet but steady. "You terrified me, Elena, because I knew the moment I fell in love with you, nothing else would ever matter more. Not the company, not the money, nothing." She swallowed hard. "And I was right," he added. "Because here I am, with nothing left, but somehow I have more than I've ever had before." Elena looked away, blinking fast. "I hated you," she whispered. "I know. I used to dream about what I'd say if you ever came back. How I'd slam the door in your face. How I'd tell you I didn't need you. She laughed bitterly. And the worst part is I didn't. I made it. Without you. Jasper nodded. I'm glad you did. Truly. She turned to him, eyes shining. But I wanted you, she said. I wanted you there when she was born, when she smiled for the first time, when she cried for hours and I didn't know what to do. I wanted you not because I couldn't do it alone, but because I shouldn't have had to. Jasper reached out, slowly, like he was offering his hand to something fragile. Elena didn't pull away. He took her hand gently in his. I can't give you those moments back, he said, but I can promise not to miss any more. The silence returned, but this time it was full of something different. Not fear, not distance, just breath, just closeness. Elena took a deep breath. I've been so scared. Jasper squeezed her hand. Of what? Of letting myself believe this could be real again? That you could be real again? He didn't rush her, didn't push. She continued, softer now. I've spent so long building walls to protect Emma and myself, because if I let you in and you left again, I won't. You don't know that. I do, he said, because I know who I am now and who I want to be, and I'm not running any more. They sat there, hand in hand, the distance between them finally shrinking. Then she said it, the words she hadn't let herself speak for nearly 2 years. I never stopped loving you, Elena whispered, even when I hated you. Jasper's breath caught. He reached up, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. I love you, he said, and I love her, and I want a life with you both. She looked at him, seeing not the man who left, but the man who came back, broken and rebuilt. Then, you'd better be ready, she said, her voice shaking. Because this isn't a fairy tale. There will be bad days. There will be crying and tantrums and doubt. But if you stay through that, I will, he interrupted. Every single day. They leaned in. Their foreheads touched first, then a kiss, soft, tentative, full of all the words they hadn't said, and all the ones still to come, and when they pulled away, both of them were smiling, through tears, that night, as Jasper tucked Emma into bed and turned off the night light. He whispered the same promise he had made the night before, but this time louder, with certainty. I'm not going anywhere. 6 months later, the seasons had shifted. Spring had folded into summer, and the city had softened under warm skies and the smell of blooming magnolias. The world kept moving, but inside one small apartment tucked above a florist's shop in Oakmont, something even more remarkable had taken root. A family. Not the kind with matching pajamas and picture-perfect dinners, but the kind built on effort, on laughter and compromise, on shared glances across a messy kitchen and quiet check-ins after a long day. The kind built by choice. Jasper stood in the doorway of Emma's nursery, barefoot, tie loosened, watching as Elena read a bedtime story in that same soft voice he'd come to crave. Emma was half asleep in her arms, her thumb in her mouth, eyelids fluttering. He didn't want to interrupt. He didn't want to leave. He never did any more. Elena looked up and smiled when she saw him. A small one, just enough. She's almost out, she whispered. He nodded, stepping in and kneeling beside them. Emma stirred just a little and reached for him without opening her eyes. He held her tiny hand in his, and the room settled again. Later that night, Jasper stood by the kitchen sink, rinsing bottles while the hum of the dishwasher filled the silence. Elena joined him, wrapping her arms around his waist from behind. "You're getting good at that," she murmured against his back. "Only took 8 months and one minor meltdown over the bottle sterilizer," he said. She chuckled. "I remember." He turned, still holding the towel. "I've been thinking," he said. "That always sounds dangerous." He smiled, but his eyes held something deeper. "Elena, I don't want to just be here on weekends or school plays or sick days. I want to wake up next to you. I want to pack lunches and argue about bedtime and take out the trash because you cooked." She tilted her head. "You're saying you want to move in? I'm saying I want to stay in. Permanently." Elena didn't answer right away. She looked at him, really looked, and saw not the man who once left without warning, but the one who returned and rebuilt, brick by brick, every ounce of trust. She reached up and touched his face, her thumb brushing the faint scar near his temple from the accident that started it all. "You already have," she said. "You just didn't unpack your toothbrush yet." They both laughed and then kissed. The next week, they started looking for a new place, one with more space, a small yard, and enough windows for morning light to pour in while Emma crawled across wooden floors. They didn't rush, didn't need to. Everything they needed was already growing. Jasper still had hard days. He was consulting again, rebuilding his career slowly, on his terms. No more suits that didn't fit his soul. No more deals that cost him more than they were worth. Elena went back to work part-time. Jasper rearranged his schedule to do daycare pickups and keep Emma's favorite snack banana crackers stocked at all times. They figured it out, one day at a time. Together, one Sunday morning, they took Emma to the Arboretum, again the place it all restarted. She toddled between them, holding their fingers, eyes wide with discovery. They paused near the duck pond. Jasper crouched beside her. "See the baby ducks?" Emma clapped and pointed. "Duck, duck!" Elena laughed. "That's right, sweetheart." Jasper looked at Elena. "Can I ask you something crazy?" She raised an eyebrow. "Is this where you tell me you bought a pony?" "No," he said, taking a breath. "But I do want to marry you." She blinked. "You do not because it's neat and tied up, not because it erases the past, but because I want to choose you every messy, beautiful, imperfect day for the rest of my life." Emma giggled at a dragonfly, unaware of the moment unfolding beside her. Elena wiped at the corner of her eye, heart full. "You're not on one knee," she whispered. "I will be. But right now, I just needed to ask you as me, not some big gesture, just the man who loves you." She stepped closer. "Then yes," she said. "Yes to all of it." He kissed her there, beneath the willow tree, and their daughter clapped because joy is contagious, even when you don't understand the words. Later that night, they tucked Emma into bed, her arms wrapped around the same little elephant toy Jasper gave her months ago. They stood at the doorway together, the soft glow of the nightlight casting them in quiet silhouettes. "You ever think about how crazy this all is?" Jasper whispered. "Every day. You think we'll mess it up? Probably." He smiled. "But we'll do it together." She leaned her head on his shoulder, and they stood there, two once broken people, with one extraordinary daughter, and a life they chose to rebuild a family, finally. This story reminds us that it's never too late to make things right. That love, real love, is not proven by grand words, but by quiet consistency, especially during the hardest nights. Jasper didn't win back his family overnight. He showed up again and again until his presence became a promise. For those of us who have lived through heartbreak, missed chances, or words left unsaid, this tale speaks gently to the part of us that still hopes. It reminds us that healing is possible, not just through forgiveness from others, but also through forgiving ourselves. We learn that family is not always formed by perfect beginnings, but by the grace to stay, to grow, and to choose one another even after the storm. So if you're carrying regret or longing in your heart, take this as a quiet nudge. Reach out. Try again. It's never too late to rebuild something beautiful, one small act of love at a time. Thank you for spending your time with us. If this story touched your heart, reminded you of someone, or simply made you pause and feel, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to Shining Stories. Your support helps us bring more soulful stories to life. Until next time, take care and keep your heart open.